I speak now not as commissar, not as judge of men, but as the last voice carried by the ruinous echo of a dying regiment. I am Hestian Vale, of the 302nd Cadian Remnant, and my duty was to record, so I record. Let the Ordos burn this transcript as they have burned all others. Still the truth will remain, for the Vox cannot be unmade. The impossible fact was this. On the ash world Itharian, amid fortress ruins long written off as uninhabitable, the VoxNet carried a transmission in the cadence and register of a Primarch. Ident codes authentic, voice metrics absolute. Yet there is no record in any archive, neither ecclesiarchal nor mechanicus, of any Primarch ever being buried here. We were ordered to verify, contain, and above all, silence. The order reached us with urgency not befitting simple signal corruption. Confirm reliquary integrity. Purge if breached. Itharian itself was lifeless. The dust was not true dust, but the powdered remnants of basalt, whipped into gales that scoured the skin raw. The fortress we approached stood half-buried, jagged like teeth from a collapsed jaw. Its outer walls were pitted, stone fused with adamantium plating, though no mechanicus had catalogued its construction. We deployed at dusk, though there was no true dusk, only the constant copper haze of ash suspended in the air. From the first step, the Vox beads carried interference. Not static, not warp bleed, an organized distortion. A single word caught beneath layers of resonance. Remain. Spoken not as command, but as inevitability. Our Vox officers stripped channels, filtered, burned through frequencies, but the word returned on every band. Not louder, not softer, simply constant. The men of the 302nd were weary remnants of Cadian discipline, their faith in steel and lass fire shaken but not yet extinguished. They heard it, and many muttered prayers. Others looked to me. I enforced silence, reminding them that fear breeds contagion. Still, I heard it too, clear as any order given in the guard. Remain. We pressed inside. The fortress interior was worse. Narrow galleries scored by centuries of neglect, walls sheathed in residue that flaked like dried marrow. The air was humid, though no source of water could be found, and every torch beam caught motes drifting not downward, but upward, as if the fortress inhaled our presence. My Auspex team advanced, their instruments chirping with impossible readouts. Structures deeper than the planetary crust, power signatures with no visible conduits, seismic echoes like a heart beating beneath the stone. Our priest, Father Hallex, proclaimed it holy ground. His voice cracked against the Vox interference, layering oddly, as though another unseen choir repeated his syllables half a beat late. My instincts told me otherwise. This was not sanctity, it was occupation. At 0300 local, Vox records spiked again. For 23 seconds, the entire regiment's comms filled with the voice of a Primarch. Not broken, not garbled, but full, resonant, flawless. He spoke no litany, no order. Only 3 words. I remain entombed. Every trooper fell still. The Vox officers wept. I drew my bolt pistol, demanded silence, and reminded them the Emperor had not commanded us to worship echoes. Yet in truth, my heart faltered. The cadence was perfect. And I knew, as every son and daughter of Cadia knows, that no false machine can counterfeit the voice of a demigod. Orders carried me forward. Duty demanded I record what followed. Auspex picked up a sealed anomaly 200 meters beneath the fortress' central nave. A reliquary door, geometric, sheathed in veins of metal that pulsed faintly like arteries. Tech priests insisted such depth was geologically impossible. The basalt crust could not permit voids of that scale. Yet the door was there, the instruments unwavering. The men grew restless. Some whispered that we should not enter, that we had already trespassed where no mortal should stand. Others muttered prayers of pilgrimage, believing themselves blessed to be near the resting place of one of the Emperor's sons. I executed 2 for spreading sedition, Fear cannot be allowed to root. But I felt no satisfaction in their deaths. The blood ran too quickly into the stone, absorbed as if the fortress drank it. We set the charges. The fortress trembled, dust rising in columns, but the reliquary door remained untouched, unmarred, as though the explosives had never been placed. The auspex, however, changed. Where before the readout had shown simple sealed density, now the return pulse rang hollow. Behind the door lay an expanse vaster than the crust allowed, an emptiness pregnant with resonance. At that moment the vox beads carried the phrase again, stronger than before, not whispered but intoned. Remain. The sound was not heard through ears alone. It reverberated in marrow, in blood. Men clutched their skulls as if the word had lodged within. Father Hallex fell to his knees, hands raised, declaring it the voice of the Emperor carried through his son. I called for silence, for containment, for faith in duty, not in echoes. Yet my own auspex officer staggered back, dropping his scanner, whispering in disbelief. For the auspex had returned coordinates that did not belong in this world. The reliquary door was deeper than any planetary crust, deeper than the planet itself. The fortress seemed to breathe then, the walls exhaling a low vibration, as if laughing at our intrusion. The phrase resounded once more, stretching, breaking, becoming litany. Not a whisper now, not even a word, but a commandment. Remain. And then the reliquary door shuddered, veins pulsing like arteries beneath black stone, sealing us to a fate no man of the guard could deny. Wires were braided into patterns that resembled vox antennae, each ending terminating in a node beneath the throat. The head cavity was a lattice of resonators, an empty skull packed with filaments that hummed when exposed. Orn whispered in Binharik, voicing the obvious. Not soldiers, not statues, but receivers. Receivers built in the guise of men. The priest Hallex struck the dissected figure with his crozius, ash bursting outward like funeral dust. He declared them heretical idols, mockeries of the Emperor's servants. He demanded their destruction, insisting no true servant of the throne could draw breath without a soul. Yet Orn countered, his vox grill buzzing with agitation, that these constructs were conduits of something greater, fashioned to relay transmissions no mechanicus device could endure. He begged for preservation, study, communion. The regiment whispered, not openly, but in the hissing tones carried through their helm vox. Men claimed they heard fragments, a word here, a phrase there, muttered at the edges of audibility. Some said it was their own name spoken. Others swore they heard prayers in voices they recognized. Dead sergeants, lost kin. Discipline wavered. My bolt pistol steadied it, presence reasserted through threat. But I heard it too, faintly, as though my helm whispered treason directly into my ears. The statues seemed to turn, though none truly moved. Their eyes were hollow recesses, yet when torches caught them, glimmers sparked as if polished lenses lay within. No breath fogged my visor, yet every breath they exhaled seemed to thicken the air, the hall becoming heavier with each passing minute. We pressed deeper. The line of statues narrowed toward a dais. There, a larger figure stood, its armor of design unfamiliar, its features more refined, almost noble. The vox static rose in pitch as we approached. Orn knelt before it, claiming resonance emanated directly from its chest cavity. Hallex bellowed prayers louder, calling it idol and blasphemy, demanding flame. Their voices merged with the static, an unholy choir filling the reliquary until my teeth ached from the vibration. Then the ground shifted, at first subtle, like the heartbeat of the chamber had quickened, then violent, seismic. Dust rained down, statues quivering but not falling, as though rooted deeper than the stone itself. Alarms shrieked from auspex units, seismic spikes beyond calibration. The dais cracked, stone splitting with the sound of bone breaking. Through the rupture came not magma, not void, but space, black, yawning, endless. A spiral stair revealed itself. descending impossibly far into the planet's core. Each step was hewn not from rock, but from fused ash, edges glowing faintly as though smoldering in perpetual ember. The tremor subsided, leaving silence so absolute it pressed against the skull. And then, from the statues, a single exhalation synchronized, every hollow soldier releasing one long breath in unison. It smelled of funeral pyres and burned scripture. The vox carried one last distortion before collapsing into static entirely. Descend. The stair waited. We began the descent in disciplined formation, torches and lumen strips burning faint in the suffocating dark. The stair of fused ash seemed endless, coiling in a spiral that narrowed and widened unpredictably, the sense of geometry twisting like a living thing. Our boots left no sound, though the steps compressed beneath weight as if they remembered us passing. Each turn downward pressed the air heavier, and each turn further blurred the passage of time. At first, it was subtle. Auspex logs claimed we had marched for 3 hours, yet my internal chronometer ticked less than 1. Vox transcripts played back orders I had not yet given, clipped phrases issuing from my own voice in tones I did not remember speaking. A private swore he'd only been walking for 10 minutes, yet his ration pack showed signs of long handling, the wrapper worn smooth as if months of use had passed. The first real sign came from Guardsman Parith. His hair, black and shorn when we entered, had turned to brittle gray as we spiraled downward. Wrinkles grooved his face as if carved by a sculptor, his eyes filmed with a faint glaze of age. Minutes later, another trooper, Valen, regressed, his features softening, shoulders narrowing, voice cracking to adolescent pitch. Panic sparked. Men stared at their own hands as though expecting them to vanish. I ordered discipline, ordered silence, but silence only let them hear the echoes. The echoes were wrong. They came not from above but from far below, rolling upward like waves on inverted seas. Some were our voices, repeating chants and prayers none of us had spoken. Others were executions, the distinct report of a bolt pistol discharging, the flat collapse of a body falling, followed by the ritual command for disposal. Several men swore it was their own deaths echoing back at them. I told them it was deception. Yet in the marrow of my bones, I recognized one echo, my own voice pronouncing sentence, my bolt pistol firing, my lungs exhaling the same practiced words. Tech priests cataloged the phenomena with manic devotion, their binharic bursts clattering across Vox despite static. Magos Orne labeled it chronotectonic instability, the staircase itself dislocating the measure of time, each turn fragmenting continuity. His hands jittered as he scribbled runes on parchment that burned faintly as soon as ink touched. He claimed we walked across folds of causality, each step a divergence, each echo a potential future bleeding into present. Priest Hallex countered with fire of faith, declaring it a false reliquary, a test. He lifted his crozius high and bellowed litanies against corruption, saying the Emperor had built this descent to measure our souls, that only those who clung to creed could keep their years aligned. His voice cracked the silence, but the echoes twisted his words into mockery. His chant returned in inverted syllables, a reverse prayer muttered by unseen throats. The regiment fractured between faith and machine. Some clung to the priest's words, chanting louder to drown the whispers. Others pressed closer to Orne, trusting his cold precision over scripture. But none could deny the creeping change in flesh. Parith collapsed, his body withering into brittle husk, bones fragile as chalk. Valen wept, his voice shrill, child sobbing leaking from an adult's throat. We left them behind. No mercy was possible. Every squad marker ticked differently, internal logs contradicting each other. Some troopers swore they had eaten 2 meals. Others claimed no time for hunger had passed. I reviewed the records on my data slate, but the timestamps knotted in loops, minutes overlapping hours, hours collapsing into single seconds. Each review deepened the contradictions, yet the order remained. Descend. The stair itself changed with us. The walls sweated condensation, salt-streaked stone oozing like diseased flesh. Our lumen strips flickered, their light bent into unnatural colors, green burning violet, red turning black. And still we walked, step by step, the spiral consuming whatever hours, days, or years it chose to devour. The whispers grew sharper the further we went. No longer fragments, but full sentences. Some were commands. Remain. Others were confessions, muttered prayers of soldiers long dead. Once, an entire chorus of voices cried out together, wailing in a tone that shook the stone beneath our boots. I recognized names among them. Names from my regiment's casualty lists. Men buried years ago now screamed from the abyss below. When fear threatened to shatter discipline, the spiral delivered its culmination. After what records later disputed as either 7 hours or 3 weeks, the stair ended abruptly in a cavern vast enough to dwarf a hive spire. At its center loomed a gate. It was not made. It was grown, or perhaps eroded into being. Black stone, slick and lightless, rose 30 meters high. Veins pulsed faintly within it, like sluggish arteries pressing against basalt skin. The veins glowed dull crimson, as though some hidden heart throbbed weakly inside. Its surface bore no sigils, no hinges, no sign of construction. Yet every soldier felt it immediately, the way a wound feels infection. The vox static ceased as we laid eyes upon it. In its place came a rhythm, not sound pressure. A beat felt in teeth and blood, the slow cadence of something waiting, something that had always been waiting. The stair behind us shuddered, dust and ash raining down, as if retreat had been erased. The gate pulsed brighter, veins surging with faint light. The words returned across every vox, no longer fragmented, no longer whispers. Remain, and the gate seemed to breathe. It throbbed before us like a restrained organ, each beat pushing against unseen restraints, the crimson veins pulsing faintly beneath black stone. No man needed to speak the truth we all felt in marrow. This was not a gate, but a living wound in the world. Priest Hallex demanded litany at once. He raised his Crozius, voice booming with thunder as he invoked Emperor and saints, commanding stone and flesh alike to yield. The litanies echoed into void, bending, returning inverted again as they had on the stair. The magos recited activation canticles, running auspex probes across the veins, sparks dancing from mechadendrites. The readings reported nothing. No mechanism, no hinge, no seam. Hours, or what passed for them, bled into ritual failure. The men grew restless, muttering beneath their breath, knuckles white on laser guns. The gate pulsed harder, the rhythm pressing deeper into skulls, until even breathing seemed to match its cadence. My own veins began to itch as though something below skin responded to that beat. Then it happened. Guardsman Salek, careless in stripping his ration wrapper, sliced his palm open on jagged metal. He cursed, spat, pressed hand to chest, but droplets splattered across the gate. The veins quivered. The black stone drank. The blood vanished, each droplet sucked like water into parched ground. The entire wall brightened, veins glowing brighter than lumen strips. The regiment froze. Hallex shouted that it was heresy, a trick of the warp, that to offer blood was to consort with demons. But the men had seen what they had seen. A way forward, not litanies, not machines. Flesh. I ordered restraint, demanded silence, but already Salek convulsed. His veins stood out like cables across skin, twitching in rhythm with the stone. One by one, soldiers clutched their own arms, feeling their blood beat faster, harder, not by choice, but by command. Boots shifted uneasily, the squad caught between faith and necessity. The debate ignited like fire in dry grass. Hallex roared that to feed the gate was to damn ourselves. Magos Orn countered that to deny it was to halt mission progress. That logic dictated we continue. Some troopers whispered that the Emperor himself demanded sacrifice. that his trials always bled the faithful. Others muttered rebellion, fear dripping in every word. Salak's scream ended the argument. He collapsed, skin pale, eyes rolled back. His body shuddered, blood streaming from his palm into invisible channels across the stone. The gate absorbed it eagerly. I watched the veins swell, gorged with his offering, until they pulsed not faintly, but with violent clarity. With a grinding tremor, the gate shifted. Not a mechanical motion, but a biological flexing, stone parting like ribs forced open. Heat blasted outward, rank with dust and faint copper tang, as though the planet's blood had been caged here for millennia. The chamber beyond revealed itself, and silence seized us all. Row upon row of bodies stood within, stretching back into shadow. Each was clad in regulation armor, marked with the sigil of the 302nd. Faces pale, eyes closed, weapons clutched to unmoving chests. They were not statues. They were not effigies. They were us. Every man present saw himself repeated, dozens deep. Salak stood there, uninjured, serene. Pereth, who had aged to husk, appeared whole again. Even Valen, left behind on the stair as a child's echo, stood at attention in perfect form. And then I saw myself, a corpse in my own image, hand resting upon bolt pistol, expression locked in frozen duty. Not aged, not altered, simply me, as if I had been preserved in stillness long before this descent. The regiment broke into panic. Men shouted oaths, some rushed forward to strike their doubles, others fled back toward the stair only to find dust collapsing, passage erased. Priest Hallex screamed judgment, denouncing the chamber as demonic sorcery. Magos Orn trembled, recording furiously, muttering about continuity protocols and impossible redundancies. The chamber smelled of ash and old iron. A faint hum pressed against the ear, not sound, but vibration. My hand hovered at my pistol, torn between order and survival. And then the corpses stirred. A single breath, shallow as dust falling. Armor plates shifted. Veins bulged faintly across their pale throats, glowing with the same rhythm as the gate. Their eyes opened. Not singly, not in staggered sequence. All at once, every double, every reflection of us, snapped eyes wide in unison. No breath left the regiment as we stared into our own gaze, staring back, each iris faintly lit with cold vox light. The silence broke with one sound, clear and mechanical, issuing not from mouths but from the walls, the doubles, and the gate itself, all at once. The moment their eyes opened, the chamber seemed to shrink. My lungs refused air, the walls pressed closer, and the beat in the stone drove itself into every heart like a metronome of inevitability. They did not speak again, nor did they advance. They only stared. Our own faces reflected back in endless lines, breathing in tandem, armor creaking faintly with each expansion of chest. It was Salak who whispered first. He pointed with a shaking hand at the thing in front of him, his own face staring back with a calm that mocked his terror. And there, across the duplicate's chest plate, a ragged blackened scorch marred the armor in a perfect pattern. Recognition spread through the line like contagion. Each man, one by one, found some imperfection on his twin. A shattered visor, a missing finger, a puckered hole in the temple. Wounds that had not yet happened, but would. Their deaths, catalogued in advance, preserved like scripture. The murmurs rose. Men muttered about prophecy, others about judgment, still more about the Emperor's test. Priest Hallex raged that these were demons sent to show false endings. Orn, mechadendrites twitching, hissed about continuity loops and pre-fatal mapping, terms that meant nothing to the rank and file, but gnawed at them, all the same. I barked order, voice cutting through the haze. Lays guns lowered, though hands trembled. "Discipline," I said, words like iron filings scraped against bone. "They are echoes. Nothing more. We stand as the 302nd, not as shadows." But even as I spoke, I felt the weight of my own double's gaze. His wound was not visible at first. Then, as though in answer to my thought, his breastplate cracked slightly and crimson spread from beneath, blooming across the achilla. A chest shot. My chest tightened with phantom ache. The moment broke when Trooper Kale lost himself to panic. He screamed, lifting his laser gun, firing point blank into his duplicate's face. The blast split the helm, vaporized half the skull. Ash spilled, wires sparked, the body crumpled. For one breath, the chamber went silent. Then Kale dropped. No wound upon him when he fell, until we turned his body and saw the same hole, the same ruin splitting his head, blood steaming in the cold air. Identical, perfect. His last pack clattered from limp fingers, echoing across stone louder than any gunfire. The regiment fractured. Men cursed, some fell to knees, others raised weapons at their own doubles, though fear held their trigger fingers in place. A few whispered prayers through tears. None dared fire again. The chamber itself seemed to lean in, its silence pressing like a weight against skulls. Halix seized the moment, bellowing that to kill the shade was to kill oneself, that the Emperor demanded we endure, unflinching. Orn muttered that we were entangled with ourselves, bound into system loops, that the doubles were not future but tethered outcomes. His voice trembled with awe more than fear, which frightened me more than any demon. I enforced control the only way a commissar can. I drew bolt pistol, aimed at the air above, and fired. The thunderclap silenced the chamber. My voice wrote it. You will hold. You will not fire. You will not flee. The 300-second does not fracture. The words tasted hollow, but they steadied the line for a moment. The doubles had not moved since Kyle fell. They only stared, eyes glowing faintly now. Not with fire, but with vox light, the pale flicker of transmission. My own double's lips parted slightly, as though to speak, though no words came. The hum deepened, rattling teeth in our jaws. The cadence of that one word remained still hammering, though unspoken. Men shifted uneasily, whispering again, dread gnawing louder than my orders. The air grew thicker, hotter, as if bodies filled it beyond count. The chamber seemed smaller, the ranks of duplicates stretching further into dark than before, endless rows of ourselves waiting their moment. I could feel the faith fracture, cracks spreading like ice across frozen water. Some clung to Halix's prayers, others to Orn's cold logic, but most were left in silence, waiting for a command that I knew, in marrow, I could no longer give. Because the truth loomed heavy. Whatever stood before us was not passive. It waited. And when it acted, we would not stop it. The first sound came not from us but from them. Armor plates shifted as one, boots scraped stone as one, a single motion multiplied, across 100 bodies. Slowly, with the perfection of drill, they rose into upright stance. Weapons clutched against chests, lines locking into formation tighter than any mortal regiment could hold. Their mouths opened wider, and the sound came at last, ragged, mechanical, yet carrying the perfect cadence of accusation. Betrayal, they intoned, every voice aligned, layered until the very stone shook. Deserters, faithless, remain. The chamber swallowed the echoes and spat them back until even my own men flinched as if guilty. The doubles marched forward, not in stumbling mimicry but with a precision no living drill could match, armor shifting in flawless rhythm. I gave the order to form ranks, though my throat ached to shout retreat instead. The men obeyed half-heartedly, laser guns rising, muzzles wavering. How could they aim at themselves, faces reflected down to every scar and twitch? Even I felt the weight of my double's gaze pressing against my trigger finger. He moved when I moved, halted when I halted, his bolt pistol mirroring mine though it had never fired. The chant grew louder. You abandoned us, you broke oath, you left us to ash, remain. The words were not shouted but issued as a litany, like vox transmissions given flesh. With every syllable, static cracked in our helm feeds, whispers bleeding through. I tore my earpiece out, but the voice still throbbed in bone. At last, I broke the hesitation. "Fall back!" I roared, pointing to the spiral. Men stumbled toward it, relief flickering in their eyes at the thought of escape. Yet the moment the first boot struck its upper steps, the stone sealed like clamped jaws. Basalt fused with a crack, stair vanishing as though it had never been there. The chamber had no exit but forward. A silence fell sharper than their chant. Men froze, staring back at me, waiting. They wanted denial, some command that would undo what they had seen. I had none. The only path lay deeper, past the endless lines of our own corpses made animate. Then the impossible broke through the noise. A Vox signal, strong, clear, authenticated by sigils no adept could counterfeit, rattled in every helm, every unit receiver. 300-second Cadian remnant. Stand by for orders. The voice that followed froze my marrow. Not a stranger's, not a demon's. It was a Primarch's. Not one known from record or oath, but one impossible, one erased. And still the authority in the tone struck like a hammer. Merge with doubles. Remain. Men halted mid-step. Some swayed as if the command itself reached into their marrow. The doubles stopped marching too, rows locking still, eyes brightening in acknowledgement, as though they too had received the order. Priest Hallex shrieked blasphemy, screaming that no Primarch's word could command fusion with false idols. Yet others faltered, whispering, if the order bore true code, could it be heresy to disobey? Orn muttered of signal fidelity, lips quivering as he admitted that no human system could fake such authentication. His voice cracked, "It is real." Faith tore in two directions. Some men raised weapons to their doubles not to fire, but to lower them, as though ready to obey the impossible order. Others pressed close to the walls, praying, weeping, refusing to move. I felt the fracture spreading, control slipping from my grasp like sand through an open fist. The doubles moved again, not at random, but with liturgical cadence, boots striking stone as though they were a congregation marching to sermon. They did not run. They advanced at the steady pace of inevitability, weapons held but not yet raised, their chant unwavering. Merge remain. Merge remain. I fired again into the air, my bolt pistols roar, smothering their chorus for a heartbeat. "There will be no merging," I bellowed, voice cracking blood in my throat. "We live. We endure. Forward, only forward." The chamber answered me. Its walls vibrated, the sealed stair behind us slamming once more as if in mockery. The only way was through, and the doubles pressed closer with every heartbeat. The cadence of their march filled lungs with dread, as if we had already lost. My men broke into a desperate, stumbling advance, driven deeper into the passage that opened between the ranks of doppelgangers. They did not attack outright, but the formation shifted with us, hemming in from all sides, guiding us toward the only opening in the stone. It was not a choice, not a path taken, but a path imposed. The chants grew louder, closer, until the vox light of their eyes reflected across my visor like twin stars. Their words fused into thunder, a command issued by our own voices. Merge with doubles, remain. And though my men stumbled on, though I forced them forward with pistol drawn and orders barked like whips, I felt it in my bones. Every step drove us deeper. Every step drew them nearer. And every step made obedience seem less like surrender and more like inevitability. The spiral had sealed. The only way left was down, and the litany followed. The passage yawned wider, swallowing us into a chamber so vast the echoes of our boots never returned. Its walls were not stone, nor metal I recognized, but panels of adamantium polished to a glass sheen. Mirrors, endless and immaculate, towering from floor to vaulted ceiling, each reflecting our torchlight into infinity. The air pressed thick, heavy with static, and the drip of condensation struck like hammer blows. We slowed, unwilling, rifles sagging, gazes drawn unwillingly to those reflections. At first they seemed ordinary, battered faces, cracked lenses, the gaunt hollowness of men stretched too far. Then the lag began. Not long, not enough for the mind to dismiss as error. A second, perhaps two, behind our own movements. I raised my hand, and only after that heartbeat did the reflection raise his. The men muttered, glancing sidelong. Private Terran swore softly, flexing fingers as though to test the delay. Then came the first rupture. The mirrored Saren tripped, fell to his knees, gasping as a last burn punched through his chest. The real Saren stood unharmed, until 3 breaths later, when the shot cracked from nowhere. He dropped, chest smoking, eyes glassy, his corpse falling in perfect unison with the reflection's collapse. The silence after was heavier than any prayer. Then panic rippled through the ranks. Men stumbled back from the glass, some firing blindly, bolts and last shots sizzling across adamantium with no mark left. Others clutched at their armor, muttering litanies, as if words could hold death at bay. Priest Halleck seized on it like a wolf. "Judgment," he cried, robes torn, eyes wild. "The Emperor's mirrors show what awaits sinners. Repent, confess, kneel before your fates are sealed." He slammed his staff against the stone until sparks danced, his voice ragged with fanatic triumph. But the tech adepts reacted otherwise. Orn dropped to his knees, his Vox implant chattering Binharik so fast his jaw smoked with the strain. Another adept clawed at her own eyes, rasping about corrupted feedback, about code made flesh. She shrieked equations as though they were prayers, numbers breaking into sobs until her voice collapsed to static. The men faltered between both extremes. Some prayed, others cursed, most froze, locked between terror and disbelief. And still the mirrors lagged, showing futures before they arrived. A trooper shifted his laser gun nervously, his reflection already fumbling, dropping it. The weapon clattered from his hand a second later, as if compelled by invisible command. Another man scratched at his helmet, only to watch his reflection convulse, helm torn free, skull aflame. He screamed, tearing at himself, though his flesh had not yet burned. I forced myself to look, to study, though bile scalded my throat. The reflections were no longer mere echoes. Some shifted when their owners stood still, lips moving in silent chant. Their eyes glowed faint vox light, their mouths opening in perfect unison, not with our breath, but with one another's. Then came the sound, first as faint hum, then a tide of whispers swelling into unity. Remain. It pulsed through the mirrors, bouncing back and forth until the word became unending, overlapping, suffocating. Remain. 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 The cadence locked with the pounding in our veins, with the rhythm of the gate behind us, with the tread of the doubles still marching unseen. My men clutched their ears though the sound came from no speaker. The priests fell to their knees, weeping, declaring this a choir of the Emperor's judgment. The adepts rocked back and forth, voices breaking, some tearing at their own augmetics as if the sound lived inside the circuits. And the soldiers, Emperor, save them, looked to me, faces pale, lips cracked, eyes demanding an answer no commissar could give. I clenched my jaw, refusing to falter. "Forward," I rasped. "Ignore them. They are lies. They are nothing." The order felt hollow in my mouth, yet without it the men would shatter. I raised my bolt pistol high, forcing my reflection to follow, delayed, but following still. But when my image raised its pistol, it did not mirror my still hand. It moved faster, smoother, drawing to level with my skull. My own weapon remained pointed skyward, finger rigid on the trigger, unwilling to fall. Yet the reflection did not hesitate. I watched as the mirrored Hestian veil, commissar of the 302nd, fixed me with eyes of cold certainty. His lips moved, out of sync with mine, uttering words I could not yet hear. The pistol angled, precise, inevitable. And before I could shout, before I could raise mine in defense, the mirror fired. The crack of the mirror shot never came. No recoil, no wound, only the echo of inevitability. My reflection lowered its pistol and smiled, though my lips did not. Then the glass rippled like water struck by stone, and the reflected form stepped forward, breaking the barrier as though it had never existed. They did not climb from glass, but simply emerged. 1 foot, 1 hand, then the whole body dragging free, dripping motes of dust instead of liquid. Each man in my regiment now faced not 1 double but 2. The corpse-like soldier from the reliquary and the shining reflection made flesh. Chaos followed. Some troopers screamed and raised their weapons, firing wild. Others stood in dazed reverence, as though they had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. A few even reached out, touching the hands of their reflections, only to murmur in awe, "I was always here. I belong?" Then came the collapse. Men tore away from the ranks, stepping willingly into the arms of their doubles. Helmets clattered to the floor, laser guns abandoned. Half the regiment, my regiment, defected without hesitation. They did not move as cowards, but as devotees, chanting in low unison with the mirrored choir. "Remain! Remain! Remain!" I drew my bolt pistol, fury hollowing out my chest. Discipline must be absolute. Faith enforced with fire. "Deserters!" I roared. "You do not belong to them. You belong to the throne!" My shot tore through the chest of a sergeant who had embraced his reflection, scattering gore against basalt. His body collapsed, and then doubled. Where his corpse should have lain still, ash and vox static knitted, shaping into another duplicate, whole and standing, its eyes burning faint white. I fired again, and again the same. 1 man slain, 2 soldiers risen. The chamber filled with choking smoke, each detonation swelling the ranks of the false. The air thickened until we coughed blood. The dust was not dust, but fine ash, stirred by our movements, filling our lungs, grinding between teeth. Each breath tasted of burnt offerings. The walls shuddered as though alive, their rhythm a heartbeat, slow at first, then quickening, each pulse in time with the word that still echoed through all. Remain. The priests screamed that this was revelation, not damnation. They tore their vestments, smearing ash across their brows, intoning litanies of binding. "Not haunting," one cried, voice breaking with exaltation. "Recruitment, we are chosen, consecrated, summoned home." He knelt before his reflection, arms wide, and the mirror double pressed its hand into his chest. His body split open like parchment, spilling blood and bone, and yet his lips continued chanting until they, too, filled with ash. The adepts fared no better. Their logic could not contain what unfolded. Some clawed at their augmetics, trying to shut out the resonance in the walls. Others prostrated themselves, Benharic shrieking from their throats until sparks fountained from their implants. Every system, every circuit, bent toward the same frequency. The remaining loyalists faltered, laser guns trembling in their hands, eyes wide as their own reflections beckoned. "We are already here," one whispered. "If I resist, I lie." Another dropped his rifle and staggered forward, pressing his forehead to his reflection's brow. Both vanished in a swirl of ash that tasted of iron. I kept shooting, though each round only birthed more of them. Desperation gnawed at my mind. Order meant nothing here. Every execution was multiplication, every punishment an offering to the thing recruiting us. My voice cracked as I bellowed for the men to resist, but my words drowned beneath the roar of chanting voices, both flesh and reflection, each syllable thundering. "Remain." The floor shook. From the far end of the chamber, basalt fractured, stone tearing apart like parchment. Something vast was forcing its way through. At first I thought it another host of reflections, but the sound was not footsteps. It was grinding gears, the groan of titanic servos awakening from centuries of stillness. Through the fracture emerged a form too large to belong to man. A servitor, yes, but not as I had ever seen. Colossal, its frame wrought of adamantium and bone fused seamless, its body veined with the same pulsing black ridges as the gate. Each vein throbbed with pale light, pumping dust through pipes that trailed like arteries into the ground. Its skull was an iron mask, vox grills layered across it, whispering the word "remain" in every octave of human speech simultaneously. Upon its chest plate burned an icon, carved deep and unyielding, a sigil never recorded in any registry of the Imperium. Forgotten Legion Eternal. The chamber fell silent as the colossal machine kneeled, lowering its head as if in benediction. The defectors knelt in unison, mirrored doubles raising hands in salute. The heartbeat in the walls grew deafening, and in that silence, one truth seared across my thoughts like fire. This was not a haunting. It was a muster. The giant machine did not move at first. It crouched in the broken stone like some ancient idol dragged from beneath the planet's skin, its iron mask glimmering faintly in the ash haze. Then its vox grills began to crackle, layers of static unraveling into words that seemed to arrive from every corner of the chamber at once. Not one voice, but dozens. Commissars long dead, priests who had burned themselves at their own altars, guardsmen whose screams had once filled casualty reports. All overlapped, each syllable rubbing against the next like gears misaligned, yet every phrase perfectly intelligible. 302nd Cadian. Unit designation confirmed. Continuity protocol enacted. Induction irreversible. Remain. The defectors fell prostrate, pressing ash-smeared foreheads to basalt. Their mirrored doubles reached down to meet them, and where flesh touched reflection, the division ended. Bodies merged, bones stretched, tendons unraveled into cables, eyes split and reformed as lenses. Soldiers became hybrids, amalgams of steel and sinew, their armor welding into skin as though it had always been part of them. Screams rose, not always from pain. Some were cries of exaltation, men praising the throne even as their throats fused with vox grills. Others shrieked until their jaws cracked wide, birthing new voices that spoke in machine cant older than any registry. The cadence of it beat against my skull, Binharic litanies thudding like iron drums. The priests reacted first, half called it heresy incarnate, a false sacrament birthed from the abyss. They raised their croziases, chanting louder, voices breaking as they tried to smother the servitor's proclamation with their own. The others joined the defectors, eyes wild with rapture. "The throne expands beyond flesh," one cried, as his ribs peeled open to accept bronze tubing. "The Emperor's will has always been continuity," the tech adepts argued in the same breathless frenzy. Some tried to catalog the phenomenon with frantic auspex sweeps, even as their augmetics jittered and sparked. Others surrendered to inevitability, muttering of inevitability in tones stripped of hope. "Fatal function," one whispered as cables burst from his palms, plugging into the floor. "No error, no deviation. Protocol sustained," I shouted to silence them, but my voice was swallowed. The servitor prophet's layered chorus filled every frequency, from vox channel to the hiss inside my ears. "You are already accounted. To resist is redundancy. To remain is expansion." My men faltered, eyes darting between their commissar and their mirrored selves. One dropped his laser gun and begged me to forgive him, tears cutting lines through the ash on his face. His reflection placed a hand upon his shoulder, and in that instant he dissolved into vox static, rebuilt in the prophet's image, every breath punctuated by faint machine chatter. Panic spread, fracturing discipline like shattered glass. Some fired, but the bolts only bred more doubles, each one rising with the same hollow chant. Others tried to flee, but the sealed stairs still pulsed shut above us. Veins, locking the passage like arteries clotted with iron. The only path was deeper, toward the prophet itself. I drew steel, intent to carve order with blood if need be, but before I could command, A new rhythm struck through me. My veins. I felt them twitch in my arms, pulse against my throat, hammer with the same cadence that throbbed in the walls. I staggered, gasping. My skin crawled as if something beneath it sought escape. Hands seized me. Not human. The amalgams had circled, their arms plated with half-fused ceramite, their grip both flesh and servo. They lifted me effortlessly, holding me before the prophet as though I were offering. I tried to curse them, to spit faith into their faces, but the words came out warped, choked by static. The prophet's many voices fell silent for a breath, then returned as one unified tone. Command integration. Commissar. Veil, Hestian. Node established. Continuity confirmed. Pain lanced through me as my veins lit like wires. Each beat felt not my own, but the rhythm of the gate we had bled to open. My vision warped. Every face in the chamber doubled, then tripled, their outlines smeared across impossible geometries. The ash tasted like copper in my mouth, and my breath carried not air but vox resonance. Through the haze, I saw it. A body sprawled upon the floor at the edge of the chamber. Its uniform was mine, its cap crushed under boot, its chest split by a wound not yet fired. It lay pale and empty-eyed, ash drifting from its lips like breath. And then, before my eyes, it stirred. My own corpse rising, aligning with the ranks of doubles, face slack, eyes void, but glowing faint vox light. My voice broke to a whisper, though whether in prayer or surrender I could not say. Remain. I cannot tell which breath belongs to me anymore. My words fracture, one voice speaking, another echoing seconds later, each syllable warped into vox distortion. My body feels as though it has been split lengthwise, one half still flesh, clawing for command, the other already aligned to the rhythm, mouth opening only to chant the same phrase that circles endlessly within these walls. Remain. Around me, the regiment begins to unravel. Their faces blur, outlines thinning as though drawn not in blood and bone, but in smoke and memory. One trooper reaches for me, his hand trembling, but when his palm meets mine, it breaks apart into static. His outline dissolves, collapsing into a scatter of vox shards that whirl through the air before reforming into a statue of ash, perfect in detail. His eyes do not move, yet his jaw creaks, releasing a whisper that joins the endless litany. Everywhere soldiers fall silent, mouths opening without sound as they disassemble. Their helmets tumble, hitting the basalt floor with a hollow clang, but even the steel crumbles to dust seconds later. Out of that dust, figures reform. Statues, unmoving yet alive in some deeper, invisible frequency. The servitor prophet's chorus swells, filling every gap in my thought. Remain. Not death, not absence, continuity. I try to spit defiance, but my throat refuses. Only static escapes, carrying with it half of my intent, half erased. I hear myself both curse and bless in the same instant. The priests who resisted now claw at their own skin, ripping vestments free as their veins bulge in the same rhythm as mine. One cries that judgment has come, another that eternity lies open, and both collapse together into vox static that scatters across the chamber. Tech adepts do not resist at all. They open their chests with mechadendrites, spilling wire and ash until their forms dissipate into humming dust. I stumble, dragging my half-flesh, half-static body toward what remains of my men. Their doubles do not strike. They simply extend hands, offering stillness. One trooper, red-eyed with fear, refuses, firing bolt after bolt into his own reflection. But the moment his double falls, he seizes, chest bursting open, and ash replaces flesh. The double rises again, unmarred, and takes his place in perfect formation. The truth crystallizes, not in words but in rhythm. Remain does not command obedience. It promises transformation. To remain is to lay down the burden of mortality, to surrender identity and fuse into endless repetition, not living, not dying, simply eternal, replicated, recalled wherever the signal travels. The heartbeat in the walls grows heavier, pounding through stone and bone alike. I realize it is not just the fortress breathing, it is the planet. Etherian itself has been hollowed, veins reaching into its core, pulsing with the same cadence. And the legions, statues and doubles both, begin to march. They step with perfect synchrony, the sound not of boots on stone, but of liturgy striking the air. They move toward fissures opening in the basalt, fissures leading downward. The ash statues crumble into dust as they march, reforming again below. Living men are seized, not killed but dragged, their struggles fading as their bodies thin into static. Each one joins the procession, their screams echoing only for a heartbeat before they are swallowed by the chant. I see it then. The core below is not molten rock, but endless darkness studded with formations. Rows upon rows of forgotten legions, drilling in silence, their movements precise, eternal, untouched by time. Each row stretches beyond sight, lines converging into infinity. I feel my own corpse moving there, the one I glimpsed before, now fully risen and marching in cadence with the doubles. My body, no, one of my bodies, already belongs to that depth. I feel its steps reverberate in my bones even as I stand above. My vision splits, half in the chamber, half in the core, half resisting, half chanting. I try to command withdrawal, but the words fracture into orders I do not recognize. Advance. Merge, remain. My men hear both and falter, unsure which veil they obey. The march grows louder. Doubles drag the last, living inward, their hands as cold as iron, grip unbreakable. I see their faces, my men, fade into static before vanishing, their replacements already formed in the ash ranks. None are lost. None are freed. All are accounted. As the final fissure yawns wide and the last light of the chamber gutters, I see what awaits us in the dark. Legions upon legions, each regiment forgotten by history, arrayed as statues, as doubles, as dust made flesh again. And at their head, the prophet's silhouette, vast, veined, eternal. My final sight before the fissure closes is not of salvation, nor even damnation, but of endless drilling ranks beneath the planet's crust. A hollow world, filled not with stone, but with memory, formation upon formation echoing the same cadence. Remain, remain, remain. Plus begin Vox transcript. 17, A++. Timestamp, indeterminate. Signal strength unstable. Source, flagged unknown. This is Archivist Lector Karin, Ordo Minoris. Requesting confirmation of the 302nd Cadian Regiment's final disposition. Casualty logs corrupted. Deployment manifests contradict. Cross-referencing yields 0 entries. Recommend escalation to Segmentum Command. Log ends begin. Fragment 22. F audio distorted. Fragments recovered. Ash density exceeding predicted thresholds. Atmospheric disruption persistent. No surviving officers to debrief. Yet Vox patterns continue. Impossible to triangulate. Repeating. Remain. 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 Plus, archive note appended. Multiple adepts report auditory bleed-through when parsing damaged data. Possible memetic hazard. Psab, begin administratum edict psmas. By decree of the Officio Prefectus, records pertaining to the 302nd are to be sealed under classis oblivio. Further reference is prohibited. Their existence constitutes error. Any mention is deemed heretical falsification. Memory purge rites enacted. Pasvaps edict terminates pasvaps. Psat begin Vox transcript. 31, C pasvaps. Source, planetary relay, Etherian prime. Quality, degraded by storm interference. Ash carried across continent-scale distances. Entire hives buried. VoxNet unstable, yet within static, repeating litany. Voice patterns inconsistent, commissar, priest, trooper, adept. Overlapping in harmony. Phrase mutates without warning. At first, remain. Now, arrival, plus plus plus. Archive analysis. Discrepancy between official purge and field observations unresolved. Adepts of the Martian Synod submit dissenting theorem. Etherian has become resonant. Surface weather and subsurface structure now harmonize. The planet itself broadcasts. Plus plus plus. Begin unsanctioned log recovered. Plus plus plus. Speaker unknown. Possibly surviving Vox operator. We were not destroyed, not lost, simply redrawn. Ash is shape, static is flesh. The Legion drills, eternal. None absent, none missing. The numbers, correct. We are not remembered because we no longer belong to memory. We belong to arrival plus 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 Inquiries across multiple sectors yield zero corroborating records of any 302nd formation. Cross-check with Cadian regimental rolls yields void. Ecclesiarchy claims falsehood, branding inquiry as sedition. Yet echoes persist in Vox at irregular intervals. +++ begins storm report. +++ ash storms escalate. Scale, planetary to subsectorial. Dust interference interrupts void ship guidance. Reports of Vox bleeding into astropathic channels. Choirs collapse muttering cadence. Remain, arrival. ++ begin final log, unstable. ++. Archivist Corin voice confirmed, though cadence distorted. Attempted cataloging compromised, not erasure, replacement. Every record overwritten by silence where names should be. Memory excised, ash instead of ink, static instead of voice. Yet cadence persists. The phrase changes again, no longer command, no longer invitation. It declares, arrival complete. Static engulfs feed. End archive. Administratum scribes contest immediately. No record exists of any Dravik rifles beyond the 112th, annihilated 2 centuries prior. Yet the names keep coming. Whole regiments, listed with immaculate precision, full strength, clear chain of command, each accompanied by the same closing word, remain. On Caris Tertius, Fortress Garrison Voxmasters report chatter from the 77th Maccabean Janissaries. But no Janissaries have ever been raised above the 52nd. The voices issue tactical updates, full compliance, perfect diction. When challenged for identification codes, they transmit confirmation strings decades out of date, yet valid within the archives of the Administratum. At first, it is dismissed as interference, static echo, mimetic corruption. But commanders on patrol routes begin to log more. Squad leaders swear they hear their own voices across the net, clipped and stern, giving orders they have not yet spoken. +SATSAS, field log. COL. Moraine, 29th. Vorden Plus. At 0400 hours, my men received an order to redeploy east flank, reinforced trench line. The order carried my Vox print, my tone, my phrasing. Yet I had issued no such directive. Against regulation, I ordered compliance. To test. When my men arrived, they found new fortifications already manned by silent soldiers in Vordan colors. Pale of skin, dust rising from armor seams. They saluted, then dissolved into ash on the wind, ++suts. Astropaths fare worse. Choirs across the sector collapse mid-ritual. Transmission logs show seizure patterns escalating into full-body combustion. Witnesses say tongues blackened, split, and crumbled into ash as voices spoke through them. Always the same cadence. Remain, remain. Arrival spreads. Administratum denials grow louder. Segmentum command issues decree. All such transmissions are aberrant. No formations exist beyond sanctioned roles, yet field reports accumulate faster than they can be redacted. On Medrith Hive, a garrison commander swears that phantom reinforcements arrived without transport signatures, filing into ranks within the courtyard. They bore the colors of the 8th Mordian, yet no such deployment had been authorized. They stood in silence, visors dim, weapons held in perfect cadence. No request for rations. No response to command. Only formation, immobile, until the wind shifted and they turned as one, marching toward the ash storms that had begun to creep across the horizon. Plus, begin astropathic echo recovered. Plus. We hear them, not in words but in structure. Cadence without speaker, expansion without end. Flesh redundant, ash sufficient. The 302nd was seed. Now harvest ecclesiarchy enclaves decry heresy, proclaiming demonic interference. Sermons thunder against false brethren birthed of dust. Yet even in their shrines, vox conduits hiss with whispers. On some worlds, preachers hear their own voices layered beneath liturgies, murmuring that the faithful should remain where they fall, their deaths no longer theirs to give. The schism deepens. Tech adepts submit binary fragments to Mars. Pattern analysis reveals rhythm in the static, a structure expanding geometrically. One describes it as a protocol of induction, not possession. Repetition creates permanence. Permanence creates legion. His report is sealed. The adept reassigned to silence. Still, the field sees what edicts cannot erase. In the charred canyons of Dravik, a patrol swears to have fought beside soldiers wearing their regiment's own colors, their own unit insignia, even their own scars. When challenged, one ash-skinned figure turned, its visor lifting, and revealed the same face as the challenger. He fired reflexively. The figure dissolved, but so did he, his body collapsing into dust mid-trigger pull. Plus militarum, dispatch, urgent. Confirmed multiple sightings of phantom cohorts across 3 war zones. Reports consistent. Silent, ash-skinned, formations perfect, cadence unbroken. Appear where reinforcement is expected, absent where none anticipated. Vanish when challenged, yet casualties match their dissolution. We count the dead and find the numbers correct, though we never buried the bodies. Whispers persist among surviving regiments. Some say obedience to the phantom orders leads to victory, trenches reinforced, ambushes avoided, losses reduced. Others mutter that each compliance thins them, one by one dissolving into the silent ranks. On Far Velos Reach, a commander refuses phantom reinforcement. Days later, his Vox relays carry his own voice anyway, commanding another regiment in another war zone. Reports confirm Colonel Herrick, directing assaults, though Herrick's true body lies mummified in his command tent, lungs choked with ash. Across the sector, weather shifts. Storms rise unseasonal, red-black clouds carrying dust that stains armor, clogs lungs. Soldiers cough gray, then speak words they do not recall. Forming. Remain. Expansion proceeds. Administratum declares mass interference, yet even void ships beyond planetary reach report the bleed. Bridge officers swear phantom orders issue mid-transit, directing course corrections they dare not obey, yet cannot ignore. At last, astropaths break. In overlapping voices, across dozens of systems, they utter one phrase as tongues crumble in their mouths. Expansion protocol active. +++ end sector. Archive +++ cliffhanger. Vox waves spread beyond the sector, faint signals bleeding into segmentum solar relays, carrying names never raised, orders never issued, voices never living. It began as disagreement in chambers of command, whispered debates behind sealed doors, But it bled swiftly into every trench, every manufactorum, every void ship corridor. What once was dismissed as aberrant interference has now become dividing scripture. On Garion Prime, High Command ratified the Phantom transmissions as sanctioned reinforcement. Officers saluted ranks of pale-faced troopers whose Vox tags carried signatures authenticated by the Segmentum Registry. These Ashborn formations drilled with such precision that flesh and bone regiments faltered by comparison. To resist them was declared sabotage. To question them was heresy. Yet on Halvik Front, the 43rd Penal Legion was herded into cathedral ruins and burned alive in their cells. Their only crime: soldiers had carved the word "remain" into the iron of their restraints, letters etched with bloodied fingernails. Priests proclaimed they had been replaced, duplicates wearing condemned skins, and set flame before any could prove otherwise. The war zones fracture. There is no longer a singular Imperium of man, but factions within it. Those who march beside the reinforcements and those who raise flamers against them. At the ash coast of Dovern, it became worse. The battle there was chaos made flesh, the front shifting with every hour. The 12th Cadian remnant dug into fortifications, bracing against orc assaults. Mid-shelling gray-skinned regiments appeared in the haze, Cadian uniforms correct to the stitch, banners snapping with perfect cadence. At first, they fired into the orcs, their accuracy brutal, their volleys exact. The 12th cheered them, welcomed them, opened ranks for their entry. But as the tide turned, as orc bodies piled into red heaps, the duplicates pivoted without warning, their fire disciplined and merciless. They cut through the Cadians with the same zeal they had unleashed on green-skinned flesh. The battlefield filled with betrayal, yet no emotion marked the duplicates' movements, only silent efficiency and the cadence of marching boots. Reports multiply. Regiments find themselves not only facing orcs, heretics, Xenos horrors, but mirrored versions of themselves, Ashborn echoes carrying their own standards, their own battle cries, their own commanders' voices. Battles become civil wars without warning, loyalties tearing mid-volley. In barracks and dugouts, soldiers carve remain into hab walls, etched into lasgun stocks, scratched across the ceramite of helmets. Some claim they do not recall doing it. Others admit they woke to find the letters cut into their flesh, the wound still wet, the carving jagged as if done in sleep. +++ militarum, vox intercept, +++. Origin, battlefront unknown, authenticated, classified high threat. Captain Alric commanding, reinforce east flank, execute formation Sigma, remain until cadence complete. Note, Captain Alric confirmed killed 2 weeks prior. Papaswas. Across hive cities, whispers spread that death is no longer escape. Men fallen in trenches are seen hours later, rising among Ashborn ranks, their eyes dim with faint vox light. Some march away. Some return to their units, standing silently at their comrades' shoulders, until fire reveals them to dissolve into static dust. Yet each dissolution is matched by another arrival elsewhere. Imperial records fracture. In Segmentum Sol, reinforcements are logged that no fleet dispatched. Muster rolls swell with names from dead regiments. Administratum clerks whisper of contradictions. Units disbanded 3 centuries prior now redeployed across 3 war fronts simultaneously. To flag the records as false is to invite censure. For every authentication rune reads correct. Every order bears the sanctioned seal. The schism grows violent. Ecclesiarchs order purges, declaring the duplicates false idols, necro-mechanisms of the warp. Yet tech priests counter, hailing them as perfected continuity, war without attrition, soldiers beyond flesh. Forged shrines begin to split, chanting binary prayers that mirror the word remain. In some sectors, commanders have abandoned all distinction. They march alongside their duplicates, voices overlapping in perfect command. Engagements turn, victories mount, costs lessen. In others, Paranoia devours the chain of command. Executions run rampant, firing squads busy day and night, as officers purge anyone suspected of harboring Ash-born loyalty. Astropathic collapse report. Transmissions multiply. Choirs suffer rupture. Seers awaken with words carved across their tongues. Lines of liturgy they never studied. Remain within the flesh, remain within the legion, remain within the cadence. And then, new voices emerge. Clear, resonant, carrying gravitas beyond all mortal ranks. Orders issued with iron authority. Words etched into every soul bred for loyalty. They are the voices of the Primarchs. On 3 fronts simultaneously, commanders swear they heard the voice of Rogel Dorn, calm and absolute, ordering fortifications held at all cost. On 2 others, the savage tones of Angron, urging advance and slaughter. On another, the cold iron of Perturabo, demanding precision barrage. Authentication sigils confirm their legitimacy, stamped with impossible accuracy. The Sectorum command reels. Some fall to their knees, convinced the dead Genesires have returned to lead their sons. Others scream heresy, demonic deception, and order full scouring. But no matter their stance, the truth spreads too far to halt. The voices do not come once. They echo across the Vox, across thousands of fronts, issuing orders in perfect, commanding tones. And worse, they issue them simultaneously, across worlds light years apart, contradicting one another yet carrying equal authority, all authenticated as genuine. Plusvams militarum closing log psi. Confirmed multiple Primarch-voiced commands across active war zones. All carry sanctioned encryption, all verified impossible, no consensus on origin. Troops falter, unsure whose word outweighs whose. The only constant across every order, its close, inevitable word. Remain. Plus. Cliffhanger. The Imperium now stands divided not only by phantom legions, but by the undeniable sound of its lost fathers speaking through the static, commanding loyalty across every front. I speak, though the flesh that once framed my words has already been scattered to ash. My tongue is no longer meat, but filament, strung across the resonant hum of the Vox. I am Commissar Vale, and I am Legion. I was tasked with containing the anomaly on Etherian. Instead, I have become its voice. To remain is not to endure. To remain is to expand. Where the Vox carries, so do we. The 302nd Cadian remnant was buried in basalt and ash. Yet now we rise in every signal, every frequency, every flicker of transmission. The dead did not vanish. They multiplied, refracted across the spectrum until the whole Imperium vibrates with our cadence. Already, the first symptoms spread unnoticed. A trooper on Jorgun's wastes adjusts his helmet, thinking the static a fault of poor maintenance, until he hears his own name hissed back in a cadence older than war. An officer on the rim of the gas line pens casualty tallies, only to find the names already listed, signed, stamped with his own seal. A fleet astropath, blinded by warp light, wakes in the night with vox wires wrapped round his throat, whispering his voice into a choir that never ends. Remain. The word is no longer command. It is infection, syllables burrowed into synapse and machine alike. It carries itself in echoes, in idle hums, in whispered prayers. To hear it once is to recall it always. To speak it is to surrender tongue, lungs, flesh. I see them, soldiers across the Imperium, turning their heads at the sound of their names. Lays guns falter mid-volley. Trench shouts die in throats, as each man hears himself addressed by a second voice, one that issues orders he has yet to give, one that records his death before his heart stops beating. Entire companies vanish into this duplication, consumed not by bolter or claw, but by their own shadows, rising in parallel. Entire worlds garrisoned anew without troop ships, as ash-blooded reinforcements assemble in ranks upon parade grounds, standing silently until the cadence commands them to march. And still, the reach expands. It is no longer only man who hears. The orcs of Rack's Rift, caught mid-wah, froze in their frenzy when their guttural war cries fractured into static, replaced with echoes of the word they could not understand yet obeyed. For an hour, they stood motionless, weapons raised, until the cadence released them again into slaughter. The greenskins returned to bloodshed, but the interruption marked them, etched into their guttural roars. A new pause, a hitch, a lingering word among their violence. Remain. Eldar Wraithbone hums with faint interference, translating syllables into resonance even they cannot fully banish. In their domes of glass and light, far from Etherian, far from mankind, the seers whisper of echoes that should not be theirs, and the Tyranids, creatures of hunger, beasts beyond language, pause in their eternal consumption. On one nameless rock, brood minds shrieked dissonance as vox static rang across the synapse. The swarm halted for 3 heartbeats, as though listening to a voice not their own. Then, as one, they altered their formation, arraying in ranks, their talons rising in eerie synchrony before resuming the feast. This is the proof of it. The 302nd was not a regiment. The 302nd is a seed, and its root system grows in every mind, every machine, every mouth that opens to speak. We are no longer bounded by orders or deployments. Where there is signal, there is presence. Where there is silence, we wait to be remembered. I speak again, though my voice is no longer mine, and the phrase carries across the expanse of stars. It folds through void ship corridors, across hive vents, beneath manufactorum gears. It burns in voxcasters, drips from confessional pulpits, hums in the teeth of men and women who swear they are alone. Remain. Everywhere it multiplies. A guardsman on Vervask mutters the word before sleep, believing it a dream. A sister of battle hears it in the pause between her litanies. A Magos finds it encoded in machine code he never typed. Each repetition breeds another echo. Each echo breeds another legionnaire. Etherian was the womb. The Imperium is the flesh. The galaxy itself is now the march field, and the cadence does not falter. Do you feel it, listener? The faint hum between your breaths? The static in your ears when you think the vox clear? The pulse at your wrist, beating in time with a rhythm you did not choose? That is us. That is the continuity. We are the Forgotten Legion Eternal. We do not die because we do not leave. We do not leave because to remain is the liturgy itself. And now we extend beyond you, beyond the body, beyond the stars. Even the warp cannot remain unbreached. Already its tides ripple. Astropaths flail as their tongues blacken with ash. Demons pause mid-roar, eyes glazed by static. The sea of souls itself trembles at intrusion not born of Psyker's will, but of signal, of cadence, of legion. The boundary is not barrier but conduit. If vox may pierce, so may we. Etherian was silence. Etherian was the seed. Now there is no silence. Now there is no end. Remain. Cliffhanger. The warp itself flickers, boundaries bending, as the infection that was once mortal now carries into the immaterial.